Welcome to Stoic Philosophy for Life. This is not just a place to listen to books, it's a space to feel them with your soul. Here, we illuminate your mind with timeless lessons. Awaken your inner strength, cultivate self-minded discipline, and guide your journey of personal growth. Every word is carefully chosen to reach what you're truly seeking: peace, clarity, and lasting transformation. If this feels like the place for you, hit subscribe and walk this path with us every single day. Now, put on your headphones, take a deep breath, and begin the journey of renewing your mind and your life. 90% of life problems are because you're ignoring these life lessons. Have you ever wondered why the same problems keep showing up in your life? Different faces, different places, but the same emotional weight. The same mistakes repeated in new costumes, the same stress, the same chaos, like an echo that never fades. It is not bad luck. It is not coincidence. It is life trying to teach you something, again. And the truth is, most of us are not listening. That is the real tragedy. Most people are not suffering because of new problems. They are suffering because of old lessons left unlearned. Lessons about boundaries, about self-worth, about attention, about control. And every time we avoid them, we do not escape the pain. We delay it. We amplify it. We carry it forward into the next job, the next relationship, the next version of ourselves that still feels hollow inside. The Stoics knew this deeply. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Yet how many of us give that power away every single day without even realizing it? A rude message ruins our mood. A delay makes us anxious. A comment on social media sends us spiraling, not because those things are powerful, but because we gave them permission to control us. And here is the hardest truth to swallow. Most of the pain we carry is self-inflicted. Not because we are broken, but because we refuse to stop and face what needs to be faced. We keep postponing the conversation. We keep numbing the discomfort. We keep blaming the world instead of examining the patterns we are repeating like clockwork. Let me ask you something. How many times have you said, "I will never let that happen again"? And then it happened again. How many times have you promised yourself to set better boundaries, to speak up, to walk away, and then stayed silent? How many moments have you chosen peace, but acted in a way that guaranteed more chaos? That is not because you are weak. That is because the lesson has not been embodied. And life, unlike school, does not let you move on until you learn it. You do not get promoted by pretending. You get promoted when your internal response changes. When you no longer react the same way, when you stop being triggered by the same words, when you stop abandoning yourself just to avoid discomfort. That shift, that is everything. But it starts by facing what you have been avoiding. Here is the first life lesson that most people ignore. Avoidance is not peace. Just because you are not dealing with something does not mean it has disappeared. Silence is not closure. Avoiding the truth does not protect your peace. It poisons it slowly. The longer you run, the heavier the burden becomes. The conversation you are avoiding will cost you more in silence than it ever would in honesty. The second lesson, your life is a reflection of your standards. Look around, your habits, your relationships, your energy, your results. They are not random. They are outcomes of what you tolerate, of what you settle for, of what you allow to stay unexamined. You say you want peace, but how often do you choose people or situations that disturb it? You say you want growth, but how much time do you spend watering the distractions instead of the roots? The third lesson, you are not your thoughts, but if you do not question them, they will rule you. That voice in your head is not the truth. It is a script built by childhood, trauma, society, repetition. You are not good enough. They will leave. This always happens to you. and unless you pause long enough to challenge it, you will live by it. The Stoics taught, it is not things that upset us, but our judgments about them. If your life feels chaotic, start with your judgments. The fourth lesson, not every emotion requires a response. You are allowed to feel without reacting. Anger is not a command. Sadness is not a signal to isolate. Jealousy is not a cue to compare. You can witness your emotions and still choose a higher response. This is what Stoicism calls self-command. The ability to act with intention, not impulse. Power, not panic. The fifth lesson, discomfort is not danger. Somewhere along the line, we started believing that anything uncomfortable must be avoided. But the truth is, discomfort is often the door to your next breakthrough. The conversation that scares you, it brings clarity. The boundary that feels awkward, it builds self-respect. The solitude you avoid, it births self-awareness. Your next level of life is hidden behind what makes you uncomfortable. And if you are still here listening, then I know one thing for sure. You are not here to run from life anymore. You are here to face it, not with fear, but with clarity, with strength, with open eyes and a grounded spine. Because you are tired of cycles. You are tired of distraction. You are tired of feeling like your own worst enemy. Let me give you another lesson. Blame is a delay. Every time you point the finger outward, you hand your power away. That does not mean others have not hurt you. It means you choose not to let them keep defining you. Epictetus said, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of them." The moment you shift your view, you shift your future. And here is the one no one wants to hear. Your life will not change until you do. Not your circumstances, not your relationships, not your luck. You. Change your attention and your energy changes. Change your standards and your boundaries change. Change your self-respect and your world transforms from the inside out. If I could leave you with one truth today, it is this. Most problems in your life are not caused by fate or people or politics. They are caused by repeated patterns that go unexamined. You keep touching the stove and blaming the heat. You keep feeding the wound and calling it fate. But the moment you pause, breathe, and ask, what is this teaching me? That is the moment everything begins to change. And that change, it starts now. Some lessons are gentle. Others arrive like a storm. But the ones you ignore the longest always come back louder, louder through repeated heartbreak, through burnout that feels like your soul collapsing, through anxiety that refuses to be silenced. Life is not punishing you. Life is trying to wake you. And when you stop long enough to truly listen, you begin to see a pattern that most of what you call problems are actually messengers. Messengers disguised as discomfort, as rejection, as failure. You think the job falling apart is a crisis, but maybe it is a reminder that you built your worth on your productivity. You think the silence in your relationship is the problem, but maybe it is showing you the words you never said, the truth you buried, the boundary you never enforced. Which brings us to the next lesson. Avoiding pain guarantees more pain. It sounds simple, but most people live in constant avoidance. They avoid the mirror so they never see the patterns. They avoid the hard conversation, so resentment grows in silence. They avoid stillness, so anxiety multiplies in motion. The pain you avoid today will cost you double tomorrow. The Stoics never avoided pain. They examined it. They invited it to teach. Because pain, when processed, becomes wisdom. It becomes discernment. It becomes calm in the next storm. But when denied, it becomes trauma. It becomes reaction. It becomes the same story with different characters. Ask yourself, are you healing or just distracting? The next lesson, emotional maturity, is the ability to pause. That space between trigger and reaction, that is everything. That is where your power lives.
You do not need to respond to every insult. You do not need to justify your every boundary. You do not need to explain your peace to people who live in chaos. Maturity is restraint. It is knowing that not everything deserves your energy, and energy is the next lesson. Your attention is your currency. Where you place it determines the quality of your life. If you spend your attention on what drains you, you are bankrupt. If you give it to growth, to peace, to inner work, you are investing in your future self. Your focus is your future. Guard it with your life. Too many people wake up every day and give their best energy to what does not matter. Arguments online, endless scrolling, replaying old conversations in their head. And then they wonder why they feel drained, discouraged, distracted. You are not tired because you do too much. You are tired because you give too much of yourself to things that do not return your peace. Another lesson ignored. The right thing is rarely the easy thing. It is easier to blame than to take responsibility. Easier to numb than to feel. Easier to run than to stay. But easy is expensive. Easy costs you growth. It costs you self-respect. It costs you the life that could have been if you had chosen courage. Seneca said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." Your life expands or contracts in proportion to your willingness to do the hard, necessary thing. The longer you postpone it, the longer you live in a loop. You know what else keeps people stuck? The refusal to let go of what already expired, which leads to another life lesson. Not everything is meant to stay. Some people are chapters, not the whole story. Some dreams were right for a past version of you, but not the person you are becoming. Letting go is not failure. It is wisdom. It is clarity. It is honoring your evolution. Most suffering comes not from loss, but from resistance to loss. We cling. We hold on. We rehearse endings that already happened. But the truth is, anything that requires you to betray yourself in order to keep it is already gone. And here is a lesson most people fight. Loneliness is not your enemy. Disconnection from yourself is. You can be in a crowd and feel hollow. You can be in a relationship and feel unseen. You can have success and feel like a fraud. Until you return to yourself, nothing external will ever be enough. The Stoics spent time in solitude not to isolate, but to realign. Because solitude is where truth echoes loudest. It is where your intuition gets clear. It is where you stop performing and start listening. If you cannot sit with yourself in silence, you will use others as a distraction from your own healing. Are you distracting? Or are you developing? Because development is not always visible. It is invisible. It is saying no when your past self would have said yes. It is walking away from validation. It is protecting your peace. It is not performing for approval. That growth is silent, but it is powerful. And if you are still here, still listening, then you are already different. You are not avoiding anymore. You are facing it. You are learning what most people refuse to look at. That life is not punishing you. It is showing you that healing is not a destination. It is a decision made daily in small ways, unseen ways, quiet ways. Let me leave you with this lesson today. The life you want will cost you the one you are afraid to let go of. You cannot become your future self while clinging to the habits of your past. You cannot build something new on old thinking. Something has to break so something better can be built. And maybe that something is the version of you who keeps running. Let that version rest. Let this version rise. One of the most dangerous things in life is a lie you tell yourself so often that you forget it is a lie. You convince yourself that you are fine while slowly crumbling inside. You tell yourself you are being strong when in fact you are just avoiding. You say you do not want to cause drama when really you are terrified of being seen. You pretend you are okay Because the alternative means facing what has been screaming beneath the surface for years. The next life lesson most people ignore is this: you cannot heal what you refuse to name. There is no transformation without truth. There is no peace without honesty. You cannot keep pretending that everything is not that bad and then wonder why your joy feels fake. Real healing begins when you stop gaslighting yourself. Too many of us carry trauma like a secret shame. But trauma is not weakness, it is unprocessed experience. It is the stories we never told, the grief we never let ourselves feel, the boundaries we never knew we were allowed to set. And what we do not process, we pass on to our children, our partners, our work, our bodies. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." What he meant was simple. The wound is the path, not something to run from, but something to walk through, slowly, deliberately, eyes open. Another life lesson that goes ignored. People do not change because of advice. They change because of accountability. Most of your problems are not a mystery. You already know what needs to change. You just have no system of follow-through, no one to check in, no structure to keep you grounded. You do not need more books, you need more action. You do not need more quotes, you need a mirror. And speaking of mirrors, here is another lesson. Your relationships are mirrors. They reflect back your self-worth, your boundaries, your unhealed patterns. If every relationship feels chaotic, the common denominator is not the other person, it is you. That does not mean you are to blame for everything. It means your healing is the only place you actually have power. Ask yourself honestly, are you choosing connection or are you recreating familiarity? Are you choosing partners who challenge you to grow or partners who validate your wounds? Are you setting boundaries or silently resenting people while pretending to be kind? Because pretending is another ignored life lesson. Pretending is self-betrayal with a smile. You think you are keeping the peace, but you are just deferring the explosion. The longer you suppress, the louder it will surface, either in an argument, in burnout, in illness, or in a quiet erosion of your spirit. The Stoics were not concerned with what looked good. They were concerned with what was good, not what was popular, but what was principled. That means saying what needs to be said, even when your voice shakes. That means walking away when staying means betraying yourself. That means choosing stillness when noise would be easier. And that leads us to another lesson. Stillness is not weakness. In a world addicted to reaction, stillness is power. You do not need to clap back. You do not need to post your every opinion. You do not need to prove your every point. You need to breathe, to observe, to act from principle, not impulse, to choose the longer path if it keeps your soul intact. But choosing the longer path takes something most people do not talk about anymore. Endurance. Here is a hard truth. Not everything will heal quickly. Some wounds do not disappear after journaling and meditation. Some days healing will feel like a war. You will want to escape. You will feel lonely, but you are not alone. You are just ahead of your time. You are in the part of the path that separates those who truly evolve from those who just perform growth on the surface. Keep going, because the next lesson is the one most people wish they learned sooner. You do not rise when it is easy. You rise when it would have been easier to quit. The version of you that you admire, the one who is calm, focused, free, that version is not born in comfort. It is built in resistance. In the morning you wake up exhausted but show up anyway. In the moment you want to yell but breathe instead. In the temptation to numb and you choose to feel. In the urge to avoid and instead you stay. That is what builds strength, invisible, quiet, sacred. And if you are still listening right now, then you have already begun. You are no longer a passenger to your life. You are the architect. You are choosing to learn instead of repeat, to reflect instead of react, to grow instead of blame. That shift, it may not be visible to others yet, but you will feel it. In the way you walk, in the way you protect your time, in the way you stop explaining your boundaries, in the way you finally trust yourself. And that is the next lesson. Self-trust is built through consistent integrity. You cannot trust yourself if you keep breaking promises to yourself. Every time you say, "I will start tomorrow," and do not, you chip away at your own voice. But every time you follow through, even in small ways, you become a little more whole. The world is full of noise, full of people who talk about change but never do the work, full of stories and distractions and reasons to stay the same. But you are different. You are doing the work. Quietly, steadily, patiently. Keep going. There is a moment in every journey when you must choose between two roads, blame or ownership. Blame is comfortable. It is familiar. It gives you a target outside of yourself. It feels righteous. They did this to me. Life is unfair. If only they understood. And while all those things might be true, blame never heals you. It never empowers you. It only delays the moment you finally say, "This is mine now." Because the next life lesson most people ignore is this: ownership is the birthplace of all transformation. Until you take full responsibility for your patterns, your choices, your boundaries, your energy, you will live in cycles. You will keep reliving the same chapter in different stories, hoping the ending will change. But the ending never changes until you do. And ownership is not shame. It is not saying, "It is all my fault." It is saying, "This is my life, and I will no longer wait for someone else to rescue me." It is stepping out of victimhood, not because you were not hurt, but because you are done letting pain write the script. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength does not come from perfection. It comes from owning your next step. That is where your freedom lives, not in controlling outcomes, but in mastering responses. So ask yourself, where am I still waiting for someone else to change so I can be okay? Is it your partner, your past, your boss, your family? Because if your peace is still held hostage by someone else's behavior, you are not free yet. Freedom begins the moment you stop waiting and start choosing. Choosing who you want to be, regardless of what anyone else does. And here comes another ignored truth. The version of you that complains the most is the version of you that refuses to change. Complaining is a comfort ritual. It makes you feel seen, heard, validated, but it changes nothing. You do not need more venting. You need more movement. Try this instead. Every time you catch yourself complaining, pause and ask, what is one small action I could take instead? Not a huge shift, just one next decision that aligns you closer to peace. That is how change begins. Not in revolutions, but in tiny refusals to repeat the past. Another lesson we forget: busy is not the same as effective. You can spend your whole day in motion and go nowhere. You can fill your calendar and still feel empty. Productivity without purpose is just noise. Do not confuse activity with progress. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Where are you wasting yours? On things you cannot control, on people who do not grow with you, on goals that do not even belong to you. Most of your exhaustion does not come from doing too much. It comes from doing the wrong things too long. Take a hard look at your patterns, because here is another lesson most people pretend not to see. Your life is always giving you feedback. The body breaking down, the same arguments, the loop of frustration, the subtle resentment you carry every time you say yes when you meant no. These are not flaws, they are signals. They are your soul whispering, this is not working anymore. But signals ignored become suffering, and suffering, when normalized, becomes identity. You start to believe, this is just who I am, but that is not who you are. That is who you became while surviving. The real you, the grounded, clear, strong version, is buried beneath the habits you never questioned. So question them. Ask, where did this pattern begin? Why am I really afraid to change? What belief do I need to let go of to move forward? This is not self-judgment, this is self-liberation. And if you are still here, then you are already different. Because most people never make it this far. They quit when it gets real. They retreat when the mirror gets too honest. But you are not retreating, you are reflecting, and that makes all the difference. Let me give you another hard lesson. Your feelings are valid, but they are not always accurate. Feeling unloved does not mean you are unlovable. Feeling afraid does not mean you are in danger. Feeling alone does not mean you are abandoned. Emotions are data, not destiny. You are allowed to feel them. You are not obligated to build your life around them. And when the emotion fades, ask yourself, what would the grounded version of me do right now? Then do that, not because it is easy, but because it is who you are becoming. That is how self-trust is built, not through outcomes, but through consistent decisions that honor your evolution. You will not always get it right, but you will always be able to return to presence, to purpose, to power. Because here is one final truth for today. The most dangerous lie is that you need to be fixed. You do not. You need to be remembered, returned to, realigned with. You are not a problem to solve. You are a life to live, a soul to embody, a voice to honor. So let go of the pressure to perform. Let go of the need to prove. Let go of the idea that peace is something you earn through perfection. It is not. Peace is built through presence, through intention, through the daily decision to live from truth, not reaction. And that decision, you can make it again, right now. There comes a point in your life where you must decide whether you want to look impressive or live in truth, because you cannot have both. You can wear the mask, keep the peace, maintain the image, or you can let it fall and let yourself finally breathe. Most people will never choose that. They spend their lives curating instead of confronting, pretending instead of becoming, and they wonder why they feel empty, even when everything looks right. The next lesson most people avoid is this: the more you perform, the more you disconnect. Every time you smile when you want to speak, every time you say yes when your body says no, every time you agree to avoid the discomfort of disagreement, you lose a part of yourself. Not all at once, slowly, quietly, and then one day, you no longer recognize the person in the mirror. You cannot build a whole life on half-truths. You cannot create peace while living in pretense. And you cannot feel fulfilled in a life that requires you to constantly hide your actual feelings. The Stoics were not interested in appearances. They were interested in alignment. What you do when no one is watching. Who you are when there is no applause. That is where the real work begins. Another lesson we ignore is this: you are always practicing something. With every habit, every word, every choice, you are rehearsing a future. You are either practicing avoidance or courage, victimhood or ownership, chaos or calm. There is no neutral. Your actions are always pointing in a direction. The question is, do you like where they are leading? Most people think change begins with goals, but change begins with standards. And standards are not what you say you value, they are what you tolerate. If you keep allowing the same disrespect, the same inconsistency, the same excuses, you are not practicing growth. You are practicing permission for your own suffering. That is not self-respect, that is self-abandonment. And here is something even harder to accept. Most of your limitations are learned. You were not born afraid to speak. You were taught that your voice was too much. You were not born ashamed of your body. You were taught to measure it against impossible standards. You were not born to doubt yourself. You were conditioned to believe you were not enough. And if that conditioning was learned, it can be unlearned. But unlearning takes work, not a new quote, not a 3-minute meditation. It takes practice, it takes discomfort, it takes repetition, it takes choosing the harder response again and again until it becomes who you are. That is what the Stoics meant when they spoke of discipline, not perfection, but repetition rooted in value. Let me ask you a question. Who do you become when no one is looking? Do you hold your boundaries when there is no consequence? Do you rest when your body whispers or only when it breaks? Do you apologize when you are wrong or only when caught? Your character is not what you show the world. It is who you are in silence, and in that silence lives another truth. You do not need more motivation, you need more alignment. When your life is built around your values, you do not need to be pushed. You are pulled. You wake up with direction, not hype, not pressure, but a deep, quiet clarity that comes from living in integrity. The modern world sells you on more productivity, more hustle, more speed. But the Stoics taught us that subtraction is often the path. Remove the noise, remove the drama, remove the distractions disguised as importance. You are not overwhelmed because life is too much. You are overwhelmed because you are carrying what was never yours to hold. And if you are still here, then maybe like me, you are tired of performing, tired of reacting, tired of pretending everything is fine when your soul knows it is not. That is not weakness, that is awakening. The moment you stop faking peace and start creating it. Another lesson often ignored is this: you cannot hate yourself into healing. You cannot shame yourself into consistency. You cannot bully yourself into confidence. Growth that is rooted in punishment will never lead to peace. Speak to yourself like someone worth saving, like someone who deserves gentleness. That voice you use with yourself, it becomes the world you live in. So be mindful of the way you speak, not just to others, but to you. Every thought is a suggestion. Every sentence is a seed. And your mind listens. It builds. It repeats. That is why the Stoics practiced self-awareness, not to judge, but to guide, not to suppress, but to redirect. You are the thinker, not the thought. And that leads to another truth. Most of the chaos in your life begins in your mind, not out there, in here, in the narratives you replay, the assumptions you never question, the fears you rehearse more than your goals. Peace is not found in the absence of problems. It is found in the presence of clarity. Clarity only comes when you stop running, when you slow down enough to hear yourself, when you finally listen to the quiet voice beneath the conditioning. And that voice, it knows. It knows what to walk away from. It knows when something is not right. It knows what to let go of. You just stop trusting it. So, return, slowly, patiently. Forgive yourself for not knowing sooner, for repeating cycles, for surviving the only way you knew how, and then decide, this is where it changes. Not because it is New Year's, not because something dramatic happened, but because you are done living out of alignment. That decision, it may look small, but it is everything. Real change does not begin in some epic moment of motivation. It begins in the quietest decision of the day, the decision to not snooze the alarm, the decision to walk away from drama, the decision to choose water instead of wine, the decision to respond instead of react. These decisions are small, but stacked over time, they become identity. Most people ignore this lesson because it is too quiet to feel real. It does not feel like transformation. It feels boring, unremarkable. unseen. But discipline, the Stoics taught, is not about grand gestures. It is about steady repetition. It is about mastering the mundane, because it is not what you do once. It is what you repeat that defines you. And most people are repeating what they do not want. Complaining daily, procrastinating consistently, breaking promises to themselves subtly, and then wondering why their confidence erodes, wondering why their future looks just like their past. But if you change nothing about your patterns, you change nothing about your outcomes. The next life lesson most people ignore is this: your self-esteem is built in private, not from compliments, not from achievements, but from the moments no one sees. When you act in alignment, when you do the thing you said you would do, when you make decisions your future self will thank you for, when you become someone you can trust. And trust is everything. Without it, you feel lost. Even in success, you start doubting yourself, second-guessing your intuition, searching for answers from people who have no idea who you are. But when you trust yourself, really trust, you move different, you speak different. You stop asking for permission to be who you already are. But self-trust requires consistency, and consistency requires structure. That is another truth people skip. You will not rise to the level of your goals. You will fall to the level of your systems. If your environment is full of distractions, your intentions will collapse. If your routines are reactive, your mindset will mirror that chaos. So create systems, not rules. Systems, rituals, anchors, morning silence, evening review, a space that reflects your peace, not your pressure. Most people never build structure because they think it limits them, but structure does not confine you. It frees you. It gives your best self room to breathe. Another hard lesson. You do not get stronger by hoping things get easier. You get stronger by training for the storm, by choosing discomfort when comfort is available, by saying no when yes is easier, by letting your discipline speak louder than your doubt. Every time you do, you build evidence. You become someone who follows through, and when that identity shifts, the external world starts to shift with it. You attract differently. You speak differently. You lose tolerance for your old patterns, not because you hate who you were, but because you have outgrown who you used to need to be. That is growth. That is alignment. That is liberation. But do not confuse momentum with ego. Do not mistake progress for superiority. One of the most powerful Stoic lessons is this: remain grounded, especially when things are going well. Ego will whisper, "You have arrived." It will tempt you to skip the basics, to stop reflecting, to stop listening. But that is when the fall begins. Humility is your anchor. It keeps your vision clear. It reminds you that you are not entitled to peace. You must practice it every single day, especially when life is loud, especially when you feel tired, especially when no one is watching. That is the moment you prove to yourself that you are no longer living on default. And if you are still here, still listening, then you already understand something most do not. That real power does not need to shout. It does not need attention. It just shows up, quietly, consistently, with presence, with purpose, with values that are stronger than your urges. That is who you are becoming. So here is the next lesson. Stop arguing for your limitations. Stop defending the version of you who keeps saying, "I am just like this." You are not just like this. You are practiced like this, conditioned like this, repeating habits that reinforce this identity. But you are allowed to change. You are allowed to evolve without explanation. And some people will not like that. Some will try to pull you back into old dynamics, not because they hate you, but because your growth triggers their comfort. You becoming disciplined reminds them of their procrastination. You choosing boundaries reminds them of how they betray their own. Let them be triggered. That is their work. Your work is to stay grounded, to stay consistent, to keep building. And here is one final truth for today. Transformation does not ask for permission. It moves quietly, but it moves everything. So move. Start small. Start now. Start again. There is a kind of strength the world does not recognize. It does not look like loud confidence. It does not look like a six-figure title or a curated life. It looks like waking up when you would rather disappear. It looks like holding your boundaries when no one respects them. It looks like standing still in your truth when everyone else wants you to fold. That kind of strength is built in silence. It is born in solitude. It is shaped when life strips away your comforts and hands you nothing but yourself. And in those moments, you learn the truth. No one is coming to save you, not your partner, not your boss, not your parents. This life is yours to carry. It sounds harsh, but it is not. It is freedom. Because once you stop waiting for someone else to fix it, you realize you always had the tools. You just forgot how to use them, or you never learned. Either way, the work now is yours. And here is the life lesson most people never want to hear. You must learn to walk alone, not because people do not love you, but because your path is your own. There are stretches of the road no one can walk with you, decisions no one can make for you, patterns no one can break but you. When the noise fades and you are left with the raw silence of who you are without performance, that is when you meet yourself. That is when the real journey begins. That is when you stop asking, will they approve? And start asking, does this align? The Stoics lived by that question. Not what will people think, but what kind of person am I becoming if I choose this? They were not interested in reputation. They were interested in virtue, in integrity, in self-command. That kind of clarity makes you powerful beyond measure. But first, you must let go of your need to be understood, because one of the most painful lessons is this. Not everyone will understand your growth. Some will mock it. Some will minimize it. Some will take it personally. Let them. Their reaction is not your responsibility. Your alignment is. You are not here to be decoded by everyone. You are here to live a life that feels right in your bones. A life that makes sense to your soul, even if it confuses the crowd. And in that confusion, something beautiful happens. You stop explaining. You stop oversharing. You stop watering yourself down to fit into spaces you have already outgrown. You choose depth over likability. You choose solitude over shallowness. You choose self-respect over validation. That choice, again and again, is what shapes the strongest people. But do not confuse strength with never needing help. Strength is not hyper-independence. It is knowing when to ask without shame. It is reaching out not from weakness, but from wisdom. Because you know, healing does not happen alone, but identity is forged in solitude. There will be nights when the silence feels like a weight, when your progress feels invisible, when your effort feels unrecognized. Those are the moments that test your faith, not in outcomes, but in process, not in speed, but in alignment. Keep going, because the next lesson is this. The life you want is found in the decisions no one applauds. Waking up early, saying no, keeping your word, writing when no one reads, moving your body when you do not feel like it. These are not big moves, but they are honest ones. And honesty compounds. Every choice either builds or breaks your character, not your brand, not your image, your character. That is what remains when everything external falls apart. That is what carries you through seasons where motivation disappears. So build it, quietly, daily, deliberately, and when you fall, and you will, here is another lesson. Self-compassion is not optional. You cannot become your best self by beating yourself into submission. Growth without grace is brutality. You are allowed to mess up. You are allowed to begin again. What matters is that you return again and again to your values. That return is the most sacred part of the work. Because the return says, I may have drifted, but I did not quit. I may have stumbled, but I did not abandon myself. I am still here, still trying, still choosing alignment. That is the voice of someone who is building something real. If you are still here, you are not here for shortcuts. You are here for substance. You are not chasing hype. You are choosing healing. That makes you rare. In a world obsessed with looking good, you are choosing to be good. Not perfect, not polished, but honest, present, awake. Keep going. Even when it is hard. Even when it is boring. Even when the old life tries to call you back. Especially then. Because your future self is not watching your wins. It is watching your willingness. Somewhere along the line, we were taught to fear stillness, to believe that if we are not busy, we are falling behind, that if we are not producing, we are wasting time, that rest is weakness and silence is failure. And so, we fill every gap, every pause, every breath with noise. We scroll, we multitask, we chase, we react, and we call it normal. We call it ambition. But what we are really doing is running from ourselves, from our pain, from the conversations we refuse to have. Because here is the life lesson so many people ignore. Silence is not the enemy. It is the mirror. When you stop distracting yourself long enough to feel, you begin to realize your life is not as aligned as you pretend. Your peace is conditional. Your joy is performative. Your purpose is on pause. And none of it changes until you do the one thing you have been taught to avoid. Sit still and listen. The Stoics practiced stillness not as escape, but as exercise. Mental clarity was a discipline. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." That suffering often comes from noise, internal and external. Stillness strips that away. It is not emptiness, it is clarity. And clarity, once felt, becomes impossible to ignore. Most people never slow down long enough to hear themselves. They confuse movement with meaning, hustle with direction. But just because you are moving does not mean you are going anywhere. And just because your life is full does not mean it is full of the right things. The next lesson is this: you must create space before you can create change. That means space in your schedule, in your mind, in your environment. Clutter is not just physical, it is emotional, it is mental. Every notification, every toxic relationship, every unfinished decision drains you, and a drained mind cannot be a disciplined mind. So simplify, not because it looks good, but because it feels clear. Cut the noise, turn down the inputs, unsubscribe from chaos. The less noise you allow, the more truth you will hear. And that truth? It may not feel good at first. It may tell you things you do not want to admit. But that discomfort is the beginning of real freedom. Another lesson: peace is not found. It is built, brick by brick, choice by choice. Every time you say no to drama, every time you remove yourself from a reactive cycle, every time you pause before responding, that is you building peace, not as an outcome, but as a way of being. But peace is not passive. It is not apathy. It is not withdrawal. It is strength under control. It is calm that cannot be provoked. It is presence that cannot be hijacked. That kind of peace is not given, it is earned, through practice, through patience, through choosing not to let everything pull you off center. If you are always triggered, always reactive, always overwhelmed, that is not a personality trait. That is a nervous system asking for regulation. It is a mind asking for clarity. It is a soul asking for less. And the answer is not more stimulation, it is stillness. Do not wait for life to slow down to find peace. Create peace so life does not control you. The Stoics did not have quiet lives. They lived in war, in pressure, in public scrutiny, yet they found stillness because they practiced it every day, in their thoughts, in their breathing, in their rituals. They knew that without silence, truth cannot speak. And if you are still here, listening, then you already feel it. That craving, not for more information, not for more productivity, but for more presence. You are tired of the noise, tired of the performing, tired of living like your value is measured by your output. You want peace, real peace, not peace that disappears with a bad day, not peace that depends on a person, but peace that lives in your spine, in your breath, in the way you walk into a room. That kind of peace is possible, but it will ask something of you. It will ask you to listen, to unplug, to stop numbing, to say no more often, to stop seeking escape in stimulation, to stop performing for a world that does not even notice. And when you do that, something beautiful begins to happen. You notice more, you feel more, you see what matters. You begin to make different choices, not because someone told you to, but because your spirit finally has room to speak. That space, that silence, that clarity, it becomes your compass. So let this be your reminder. You do not need to hustle your way into meaning. You need to slow down long enough to hear what is already true. There comes a point when you realize the problem is not the world. It is the way you have been taught to move through it. You were not born to doubt yourself. You were trained to. You were not born to chase approval. You were conditioned to. And now your life has become a performance, trying to impress people who do not even know themselves. This is the next life lesson so many people miss. You cannot live a meaningful life while outsourcing your identity. The moment you tie your worth to how others see you, you hand your power away. Every like, every compliment, every silence starts to shape who you are, and slowly you disappear beneath the weight of everyone else's expectations. At first, it feels safe. Approval feels like belonging. But over time, something shifts. The compliments stop working. The attention feels hollow. The applause grows quieter. And you are left asking a question you have avoided for years. Who am I when no one is watching? The Stoics answered that question not by asking others, but by asking themselves, daily. Marcus Aurelius wrote not for fame, but for clarity. His journal was his mirror, because he knew the most dangerous distance is the one between who you are and who you are pretending to be. So here is the truth. You will never feel at peace living someone else's version of your life. Not your parents, not society's, not the algorithms. You can follow the formula, hit the milestones, do everything right, and still feel wrong inside, because you cannot trick your soul. It knows when you are out of alignment, and that knowing will keep whispering until you listen. Alignment is not about being comfortable. It is about being honest. It means telling the truth about the job that drains you, the relationship that suffocates you, the choices that numb you. Alignment is not easy. It is confrontational, but it is the only path to a life that actually feels like yours. Most people are not living, they are imitating. Imitating success, imitating happiness, imitating people who are also imitating. And the cycle continues until someone has the courage to break it. That someone can be you. But you will have to stop asking for directions from people who have never been where you are going. You will have to stop shrinking yourself to fit into rooms that feel too small. You will have to stop negotiating your values for comfort. This is the real work, not becoming someone else, but remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Here is another ignored truth. Authenticity has a cost. You will lose things when you stop pretending. You will lose relationships built on performance. You will lose roles you no longer want to play. You will lose versions of yourself that kept you safe but small. But what you gain is real. Peace that is not performative. Connection that is not transactional. A life that feels aligned, not just admired. You are not meant to be a chameleon, blending in to be accepted. You are meant to stand where you are, speak what is true, and trust that who remains is who is meant to. That is not arrogance. That is self-respect. And it terrifies people who depend on your silence. But silence is no longer your home. You have stayed quiet long enough. Now is the time to live louder, not with noise, but with clarity, with purpose, with boundaries that protect your energy and a voice that honors your truth. And when you begin to live this way, the world will feel different. Not because it changed, but because you did. You no longer seek peace. You become it. You no longer chase worth. You embody it. You no longer ask, will they accept me? You ask, am I being real with myself? That shift is freedom. And if you are still listening now, something inside you is already shifting. You are not here to impress. You are here to remember. You are not here to win approval. You are here to live in integrity. You are not here to keep performing peace. You are here to live it. So stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for certainty. Stop waiting for the moment when everyone claps for your truth. That moment may never come. But what can come is clarity, is conviction, is the life you were meant to live, unfiltered, unshaken, undeniable. And it begins not with reinvention, but with return. Everything ends. That is not a threat, it is a truth. People leave, seasons shift, opportunities fade, and yet we fight endings like they are mistakes, like letting go means failure. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is release what no longer fits, not because it was never real, but because it no longer serves who you are becoming. The next life lesson we resist is this: letting go is not the same as giving up. Letting go means you finally respect your own evolution more than your need for control. It means you are willing to disappoint others to stay in integrity with yourself. It means you understand that forcing things to stay will never bring peace, only delay the pain. And pain delayed is still pain. It just digs deeper. It manifests in your health, in your tone, in your energy. It shows up as tension, fatigue, resentment. That is not life punishing you. That is life inviting you to stop clinging, to stop surviving, to start choosing something better. The Stoics understood this well. They practiced detachment, not from love, but from outcomes, from ego, from things they could not control. You could leave life right now, Marcus Aurelius wrote. Let that determine what you do and say and think. That is not morbid, that is awakening. Because the truth is, we live like we have forever. We put off the conversation. We postpone the dream. We wait to forgive. We wait to start. But tomorrow is not promised. And the version of you that keeps waiting for the perfect moment may never arrive. The only moment that matters is this one. And that is the next lesson. Your life is happening now, not later. Peace is not in the future. Clarity is not after the next thing. Joy is not something you earn once you finish proving your worth. If you do not learn to feel it now, you will not feel it then. You will just keep chasing the next milestone, hoping the next version of success will finally make you feel whole. But you are not broken. You are just disconnected from yourself, from your values, from the present. That is why even good things feel empty. That is why even rest feels restless. You cannot be at peace in a life that is not rooted in presence. The Stoics lived deliberately. They practiced remembering death, not to fear it, but to sharpen their sense of what matters. Memento mori was not a slogan, it was a discipline, a way of asking, if this was my last day, would I be proud of how I spent it? And if the answer is no, something needs to shift. Because the real danger is not death, it is regret, not the big regrets, the quiet ones, the chances not taken, the silence held too long, the love not expressed, the time wasted trying to be who the world wanted instead of who you were meant to be. Let this be your invitation to stop wasting time, to walk away from the half-truths, to release the roles, to let go of what feels heavy and choose what feels real. That does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying what was never yours to hold. And if you are still here, then like me, you are ready. Ready to stop measuring your life in metrics that do not matter. Ready to stop pretending you are fine when your soul is tired. Ready to stop making decisions based on fear and start choosing based on values. It may look quiet from the outside, but that kind of choice, it changes everything. Some lessons do not arrive through books or mentors. They arrive through breaking, through disappointment, through betrayal, through watching the version of your life you worked so hard to build fall apart in front of you. And in that collapse, a quieter truth emerges, that who you are in the ruins says more than who you were in the victories. Most people try to avoid failure at all costs. They fear it, they run from it. But what they do not realize is this: failure is not the end. It is the door to awareness, the door to growth, the door to becoming the version of you that could never be born through ease. The Stoics did not view failure as disgrace. They viewed it as data, as direction, as the raw material of wisdom. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." You cannot train resilience in theory. You must live through what hurts and still choose to rise with integrity. There is a lesson life will keep teaching you until you truly embody it. It is okay to begin again. Not once, not twice. As many times as it takes. Every time you get back up, you are not starting from scratch. You are starting from experience, from clarity, from deeper truth. But beginning again requires something few talk about: forgiveness, not just for others, but for yourself, for the version of you who did not know better, who stayed too long, who tolerated too much, who broke the promise again. You are not meant to carry that version in shame. You are meant to carry their lessons forward with compassion. Self-compassion is not a weakness, it is fuel. It is how you keep going when motivation dies. It is how you keep your dignity when the results do not reflect your effort. It is how you keep showing up when the old version of you would have quit. You do not need more punishment. You need more practice, more patience, more grace. There will be seasons where everything feels slow, where progress feels invisible, where growth feels like standing still. But in those seasons, you are not stuck. You are being refined. You are learning how to hold your center when nothing goes your way. And that lesson? It builds a version of you that cannot be shaken by small things. And if you are still listening now, then I know you are in it. You are not just inspired, you are invested. You are done with the quick fixes. You are done with the cycles. You are building something different this time, something deeper, something real. But do not expect the world to celebrate your quiet transformation. Most people will not notice your new discipline, your silent boundaries, your early mornings, your internal rewiring. That is not their job. It is yours. And the reward is not applause. It is alignment. So let this be your reminder. Fall as many times as you must, but never stay where you broke. Let every crack become an opening. Let every ending become initiation. Let every setback sharpen your focus. And let every moment you return to the path, even with shaking hands, be a declaration that you are not done. You are not defined by what happened. You are defined by how you respond now. This is the part where most people stop. They feel inspired, maybe even awakened, But then the motivation fades, the noise returns, and the pull of old habits whispers louder than their newly awakened clarity. And just like that, they fall back asleep. Not literally, but spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and life becomes routine again. But not you. If you have made it here, through every layer of truth, through every uncomfortable mirror, then you are not most people. You are someone ready to build something different. Not just a better life, but a better way of being in life. One rooted in clarity, intention, and inner leadership. The kind of life that does not depend on applause to feel valid. The kind of life that whispers peace, even when everything around you screams chaos. The final life lesson, the one behind all the others, is this. Your outer world will always reflect your inner one. You can chase better jobs, better relationships, better routines. But if you carry the same mind, the same wounds, the same unchecked beliefs, you will recreate the same suffering in a different disguise. The real work is not out there. It is within, always within. That is why Stoicism, at its core, is not a mindset of detachment. It is a mindset of liberation. Liberation from false control. Liberation from ego. Liberation from being held hostage by everything that does not belong to you, other people's opinions, past regrets, future fears. When you strip all that away, what is left is presence. And in presence, you find your power. This power is not loud. It does not need to be. It shows up in your breath, in your calm, in your refusal to react just because something provokes you, in your ability to hold discomfort without falling apart, in your silence that does not signal defeat, but mastery. That is the strength you have been building with every lesson you faced. And now you must choose what to do with it. Will you let this become another piece of content that fades from memory? Or will you let it change how you move, how you speak, how you lead yourself when no one else is watching? Because that is the only thing that matters now. Not what you heard, but what you live. So live differently, not louder, not faster, but deeper. Walk with integrity. Let your values lead your voice. Let your vision guide your time. Let your boundaries protect your peace, not because you are trying to be perfect, but because you are finally done living on default. There will still be moments you forget. You will slip. You will react. You will question yourself. That is human. But now you know how to return, how to breathe before speaking, how to pause before deciding, how to choose response over reaction. That return, again and again, is your superpower. Let others chase, let them perform, let them collect shiny things and empty affirmations. You build peace, you build truth, you build a life that feels like you from the inside out. And if no one understands it, so what? This is not about being understood. It is about being real. And real will always feel like rebellion in a world that rewards the fake. So rebel. Rebel with your silence, with your self-respect, with your clarity, with your calm, with your refusal to keep ignoring the lessons life has been placing in front of you all along. If this message landed, then let this be your vow, not to be perfect, but to be present, to stop escaping, to stop waiting, to stop performing peace and start creating it. Your life does not need to look extraordinary to be extraordinary. It just needs to be aligned. That alignment, it starts now, right here, with your next breath, with your next word, with your next choice. The rest takes care of itself. If this series touched you, then like me, you are not here to live passively. You are here to live on purpose, quietly, powerfully, relentlessly. So do not let this be where it ends. Let this be the day you return to what matters most, you.
If this journey has stirred something inside you, hold on to it. Nurture it. Don't let this be just another video. Let it be a mere reminder that you still have time, choices, and power. And if this message spoke to you, stay with us. Let's keep lighting up your mind, one story at a time.